Have you ever thought about going vegan, but then got overwhelmed when you started thinking more about it? Well, I did too at first, but 1,802 days later, I'm now in the best shape of my life. I'm eating amazing food, and it's easily been the best decision I've ever made. Over the years, I've learned incredibly valuable lessons on my vegan adventure. So here's 40 lessons that make going plant-based a piece of vegan cake. Lesson 1. If you've been vegan for any amount of time, you know the most common question you get asked is, where do you get your protein from? Which makes sense since, especially today, we've been conditioned to think that protein means meat. Nowadays, if you go into any restaurant and they have an option to add a protein, 9 out of 10 times, all the options are going to be meat. But the good news is you can get protein from plant foods as well. And as it turns out, all plant foods have protein to varying degrees. So lesson 1 is, all plant foods have some protein. Lesson 2. Now you might be asking yourself, okay, but do plants have enough protein? And that was a big concern for me too, especially since I was an athlete back in college and I've always loved working out and going to the gym. But after doing some research, I realized that getting all the protein I needed on a plant-based diet to maximize gains and feel my best was easy. And now, I'm in the best shape of my life. Most of the time, I don't even think about protein anymore. Beans, chickpeas, and lentils, which by the way are called legumes, which is a word I'm going to be using a lot, are all great sources of protein, to name a few. So lesson 2 is you can easily get all the protein to build muscle on a plant-based diet. Lesson 3. I remember when I was a kid buying protein powder for the first time, my friends told me, all right, whatever you do, just don't buy soy, get whey. Soy gives you boobs. So for years I avoided anything soy related, but then I started to look into the research around soy and found that not only was that a myth, but soy foods have tons of benefits. They're full of high quality protein, they're rich in nutrients, including B vitamins, fiber, potassium, magnesium, and you can enjoy soy in tons of its different forms, including tofu, soy milk, edamame, or tempeh, to name a few. So lesson 3 is, don't be afraid of soy. Lesson 4. I used to be one of those guys that would look at the options in a restaurant and never look twice at the tofu option. After all, it's bland, gross, and everyone dunks on it. But since going vegan, I've realized there are so many ways to eat tofu and so many ways to flavor it to make it taste amazing. I've had tofu scrambles, fried tofu, barbecue tofu, tofu and sauces, the list goes on. So lesson 4 is tofu is versatile and can taste amazing. Lesson 5. I loved using dairy to get a huge boost in protein, and I was really disappointed to see that almond milk has almost no protein. Well, then I realized that a cup of soy milk has 8 grams of protein, and so since then, it's been my go-to milk for oatmeal, coffee, and smoothie bowls. Not only that, but it uses 95% less water than cow's milk, so it's climate friendly as well. So lesson 5 is soy milk is the best milk alternative. Lesson 6. Okay, so I lied a bit. There's one milk alternative out there that's even better than soy milk. It even has a little bit more protein than soy milk. It's just as creamy, maybe a little bit more delicious, and that's pea milk.
Brother, ugh.
Like yellow peas. You nasty. Get your mind out of the gutter. The downside is that it is hard to find, but whenever they offer it at the coffee shop, you know that's what I'm getting. So lesson 6 is pea milk is the best milk alternative. Lesson 7. Since I've been vegan, I found myself putting more of an emphasis on eating whole grains, legumes, fruits, and vegetables, and just a lot more whole plant foods in general. It inspired me to cook more at home and reach more for high fiber, whole plant foods as part of my everyday staples. Even when I go out to eat, I find myself eating more beans, veggies, and fruits. As a result, I personally have found it way easier to maintain healthy eating habits since going vegan. So lesson 7 is veganism makes it easy to eat healthy. Lesson 8. Now, I went vegan during the pandemic, so it was an awesome opportunity to learn how to do it, and I thought, hey, this isn't so hard. Then we got out of quarantine, friends started wanting to hang, and damn, did things start getting more challenging. So I found that personally the hardest part about being vegan is not the food, but it's the social situation. So there's a couple of solutions. You can eat in advance, you can try to make sure you go to a vegan restaurant or one with vegan options, or you can work with the waiter to see if they can make something special for you. So lesson 8 is one of the hardest parts about being vegan is not the food, but it's the social situations. So plan accordingly. Lesson 9. When I first went vegan, I said I was going to make exceptions when I travel because I didn't want to miss out on all the incredible traditional food that was out there. I mean, come on, eating is one of the best parts about traveling. Well, during my nearly 5 years of being vegan, I've made it a challenge for myself to find vegan versions of traditional foods wherever I go, and I've been consistently amazed at what I find. Sometimes the traditional dishes are naturally vegan anyways, and sometimes they've been veganized by swapping in ingredients. So, safe to say, eating has still been one of the best parts about traveling, vegan or not. And I've got a handy tip so that y'all can have the same success while traveling, and that's coming up later. So lesson 9 is you can find amazing vegan food even when you're traveling, and it can make traveling even more exciting. Lesson 10. So when I first went vegan, I was really afraid to lose out on my favorite food, and that's ice cream. I'm an ice cream fiend. I've done some things I'm not proud of for ice cream. And y'all, as a certified ice cream fiend, I'm telling you, I've had some of the best ice cream since going vegan. And not just that, I found vegan versions of so many foods I used to love, like sushi, tacos, burgers. I've even had a vegan steak. That was really an iconic moment for me to feel like veganism isn't limiting. So lesson 10 is you can still eat most of the food you've had before, and it's gotten so good nowadays that you can even find realistic steak. Lesson 11. So having been vegan for this long, I've heard my fair share of stories about people going vegan and getting really sick and then having to stop, but they hadn't seen this video yet, had they? But on a serious note, the reality is you can get all the nutrients you need while following a plant-based diet. You just have to think of the food groups a bit differently, like legumes, whole grains, veggies, fruits, nuts and seeds. And for me, this could mean having a bowl of oatmeal with fresh fruit in the morning, and then making myself a peanut sweet potato stew with chickpeas for lunch. And as long as you're getting a variety of all those different food groups, you'll be fine. Now, you might be thinking, no supplements? Well, that's the next point. So lesson 11 is you can get all the nutrients you need on a plant-based diet. Lesson 12. What about supplements? The reality is there's only one nutrient I always see as a must supplement, and that's B12, which is super easy to do. However, plant-based doctors tend to recommend supplementing vitamin D as well as a plant-based omega-3 from algae. So that's what I tend to do. And let's be real, this isn't unique to eating vegan. The majority of my non-vegan friends also consume different types of vitamins and supplements. So lesson 12 is that B12 is the most important nutrient you should supplement, but you should also consider supplementing vitamin D and algae-based omega-3. Lesson 13. One of the biggest mistakes I see when people try to eat a plant-based diet is that they just remove the meat without adding anything else. Huge mistake. And that's how you get sick. And the best replacement out there for meat are legumes. So like I said, those are your beans, lentils, and chickpeas, which come with a ton of protein, iron, and fiber. Throw them on pastas and salads and curries, make them into purees like hummus. The options are endless. So lesson 13 is legumes are the best replacement for meat. Lesson 14. Speaking of fiber, this is a nutrient that people in the US are really missing out on. There's a huge case for protein in the US and the world, but the reality is people are getting more than enough. Rather, we should be focusing on getting fiber, which is incredible for your gut. And the true fiber heavy hitters are not fruits and vegetables, but rather whole grains and legumes. So sometimes it's as simple as swapping out regular pasta for whole wheat pasta or even a legume pasta. So lesson 14 is you should be focusing on getting lots of fiber into your diet and your gut will thank you for it. Lesson 15. So yeah, speaking of whole grains, these are so underrated. They're one of the unsung heroes of nutrition, and we barely touch these in the US. They're packed with fiber, micronutrients, antioxidants, and pretty good protein too. These are your oats, brown rice, whole wheat, quinoa, but every region has their own. In Mexico, they eat a lot of amaranth. In Italy, they eat a ton of farro. In the Middle East, there's a lot of bulgur and farique. As a general rule, if you're ever eating white rice, try swapping it out for a whole grain. So lesson 15 is that whole grains are massively underrated and we should be eating more of them. Lesson 16. An underrated crime of the dairy industry is that they've made us think that you can't get anything creamy without dairy. And that was hard for me to stomach because creamy foods were my favorite. Remember how I was talking about ice cream? So when I started looking online for recipes for creamy vegan foods like Alfredos or risottos, I started seeing all the different plant foods people would use to add creaminess to their foods. Tahini, plant-based milks, coconut creams, vegan cream, blended almonds, blended cashews. They would even use silken tofu. There's so many options, and they've all got different properties that add different taste and nutrition to what you're eating. In a weird way, I'd argue eating only dairy is the limiting option. So lesson 16 is that there are lots of ways to add cream to dishes that aren't dairy. Lesson 17. Ever walked into a restaurant, asked for the vegan option, and been told, we have salad? It's like, okay, first of all, how dare you? Jokes aside, vegan food isn't just salads. I actually never really liked salads and still don't eat them very often. So lesson 17 is vegan food is more than just salads. Lesson 18. When people say plants, they don't mean just vegetables. They mean oats, cashews, avocados, dark chocolate, butter beans. So a lot more goes into it. So lesson 18 is vegan food is not all vegetables. Lesson 19. As a matter of fact, I used to be one of those meat, rice, and veggie guys, so when I would meal prep for the week, I'd always follow that formula. And to be honest, before going vegan, I didn't have a lot of variety in my diet, which is, a bit weird when you think about it. But now I eat so many more foods that I either barely ate or didn't eat at all before. So dates, peanut butter, chickpeas, flax seeds, berries, mango, falafel, tahini, mushrooms, different types of seeds, curries, and tofu. So lesson 19 is going vegan has expanded the different types of food I eat daily. Lesson 20. So this lesson is, yes, you can still eat chocolate. The main ingredient is cacao, after all, which comes from plants. Dark chocolate is almost always vegan, and every day you can find more milk chocolate made with plant milks. So lesson 20 is, you can still eat chocolate. Lesson 21. So I lived in Milan for a few months, and people told me I was gonna really struggle in Italy since I wasn't gonna be able to eat pasta. Luckily for me, the pasta I found in Italy was almost always vegan. Even cooler, they had tons of gluten-free options there, made from peas, lentils, buckwheat, you name it. And a lot of people seem to think that pasta is made with egg, but I found pasta with egg to be the exception. I'd go as far to say that I eat way more pasta and different varieties of it ever since going vegan. So lesson 21 is pasta is vegan, usually. Lesson 22. You might be thinking that going vegan is complicated, you gotta carefully plan all your meals, and that's just not the kind of time you have, damn. But what I found is that in general, as long as you're eating a wide variety of whole plant-based foods from all the food groups, you'll be fine. So lesson 22 is, as long as you eat a wide variety of whole plant-based foods most of the time, you should be fine. Lesson 23, but isn't a vegan diet full of processed foods? Well, the reality is there are more and more options every day that fall under that category, but it doesn't have to be all whole foods or all processed foods. The way that I've made it work for me is I find myself eating about 80% whole foods, and then I'll delete a vegan cheeseburger. So lesson 23 is, you can have the processed food every now and then. It's okay, everything in moderation. Lesson 24. One dead giveaway that someone is vegan or has dabbled is if they know what nutritional yeast is. Look, I had never even heard of this stuff before going vegan, but it's this secret ingredient that can level up a lot of vegan dishes. Essentially, it's a savory powder that has a subtle cheesy flavor, and it's full of protein and B vitamins. You can throw that on popcorn, salads, potatoes, or add it to sauces. So lesson 24 is, nutritional yeast is a hack that can make your food more cheesy, and it packs a punch of protein too. Lesson 25. Have y'all ever heard of the blue zones? They're known for being the areas in the world where people consistently live the longest out of anywhere. A lot of them live up to 100. Something I found out during the course of being vegan is there's one food in particular that's linked to living a really long time. And in the blue zones, they eat a lot of this food. Not only that, but this food is one of the cheapest out there. It's tasty, it's satisfying, and you can find them in every supermarket. What is this mysterious food? Well, it's legumes, which, like I said before, beans, lentils, chickpeas, split peas. So eat them canned, from dried, in your hummus. Just make sure to get these in. So lesson 25 is, legumes are some of the healthiest foods you can eat. Lesson 26. One way to add legumes to any diet is by looking out for legume pastas. Legume pastas like chickpea pasta and lentil pasta have become more and more commonplace and make it really easy to up your plant protein and legume intake. So lesson 26 is that legume pastas are an easy way to get more legumes into your diet. Lesson 27. Have you ever been confused by the whole concept of eating fat? Is it good for you? Is it not? Well, here's the thing. Fats are an essential nutrient, and one of the key reasons that we need fat is because many nutrients are fat soluble. That means that you need fat in the meal to absorb those nutrients. So make sure you're always including a fat source in your meal, because including fats, especially healthy ones, can be the difference of whether or not your meal is a nutrient powerhouse. So lesson 27 is you should always include a fat source in your meal. Lesson 28. Let's explore some delicious ways to incorporate these fats into your diet. Some of the best sources of plant-based fats are going to be seeds, nuts, soy in the form of tofu or soy milk, and avocados. So lesson 28 is seeds, nuts, soy, and tofu are all great whole fat sources. Lesson 29. All right, so this one's a bit random admittedly, but I had to include it. You can make some mean brownies out of black beans. Just saying. Try it. So lesson 29, you can make brownies out of black beans. Lesson 30. Have you ever heard someone say, I don't like vegan food? I always thought that was weird because I don't think people realize what they're saying when they say that. They don't like peanut butter jelly sandwiches, guacamole, hummus, French fries, mango sticky rice, falafel, bean burritos, candied sweet potatoes, because all those foods are usually, for the most part, completely vegan. There are a lot of vegan foods out there that you already love. So lesson 30 is a lot of the food you already enjoy is vegan. Lesson 31. Do you ever find yourself throwing out wilted spinach or moldy berries? If you're like me, you've wasted a lot of money on produce that always seems to go bad before you can eat it. So I found that buying them frozen helps a ton with having veggies and fruits ready to go at all times. And they tend to have even more of their nutrients than their fresh counterparts, and they're usually cheaper. Throw them in smoothies, or you can also just throw them in while you're cooking and you'll forget they were even frozen in the first place. So lesson 31 is buying frozen fruits and veggies is an easy way to make life easier. You and your wallet will thank you. Lesson 32. Something I hear a lot is that it takes more time to cook vegan, but there's a few tricks that you can do to make it faster than cooking with meat. For example, if you're used to putting chicken on your salad, you have to spend time heating up the pan and then cooking the chicken. On the other hand, you could just dump a can of chickpeas on it and you're good to go. So don't be afraid of canned beans. They're extremely convenient, absurdly cheap, packed with key nutrients, and might help you live to 100. So lesson 32 is, don't be afraid of canned beans. Lesson 33. I've had friends who have told me they want to go vegan, but they already have some food allergies that makes them feel like they've already got too much to worry about already. But what I found is that vegan restaurants and products tend to be much more knowledgeable and conscious about allergies. I've had a friend explain to me that once he was looking for a place with a separate kitchen for gluten-free options, and the only place that was able to accommodate that request for him was a vegan restaurant. So lesson 33 is you can do vegan even if you're gluten-free or have other allergies, and sometimes vegan places are actually the best options. Lesson 34. I used to think that eating vegan would be expensive. Have you seen the price of Beyond Meat and all those other substitutes? But after my first couple of weeks of being vegan, I noticed something that surprised me. My grocery bill was coming out to be 30 to 40% cheaper than it was before I went vegan, even though I was buying stuff like Beyond Meat. How did this happen? Well, I also started buying a lot more potatoes, grains, legumes, veggies, all of the stuff that tends to be the cheapest in the supermarket, which also tends to be some of the healthiest stuff in there. And as I thought about it more, fish, meat, cheese, that was always the most expensive part of my grocery list. So if you stick to the vegan staples, not only will you be healthier, you'll be saving money. So lesson 34 is it's actually way cheaper to eat vegan if you focus on the basics. Lesson 35. Dead giveaway that someone isn't vegan? They say almond milk is their favorite plant milk. What is this, 2010? It's so watery, and there are so many better alternatives out there to discover. So lesson 35 is almond milk is the worst vegan milk. Lesson 36. When I was living in LA, I invited this Argentinian girl I had met out to dinner. She wasn't vegan, but she'd never tried vegan dining before, and I wanted to impress her, so I took her to this upscale place. As I browsed the menu, I realized the main courses were cauliflower steak, pan-fried broccoli, and grilled portobello mushrooms. Yeah, they were tasty, but an hour later we were both hungry again. Not to mention after a bit of wine, let's just say the next morning, my memory of the evening was
a bit hazy.
Here's the lesson. Broccoli, eggplant, cauliflower, these are not main courses. They're like 100 calories. They're great sides, but not enough to replace meat in a meal. So when you're eating, make sure there's a substantial protein source like beans, chickpeas, or tofu on your plate. Do not let them serve you a stalk of broccoli and call it a meal. So lesson 36 is broccoli and cauliflower, eggplant, and mushrooms are not meat replacements. Do not let someone serve you a cauliflower as a main course. Lesson 37. A common concern I hear from people about vegan diets is that plant proteins are incomplete compared to animal proteins. And they say this because proteins are made up of these building blocks called amino acids, and some plant proteins are high in some amino acids, but lower in others. The thing is, think of plant proteins like a puzzle. Each food is a piece with different amino acids. Alone, they might seem incomplete, but together, they form the whole picture. The truth is, as long as you're eating a variety of plant foods throughout the day, those amino acids balance out. I promise you, I've never worried about this, and if you're still concerned, a scoop of vegan protein powder will do the trick. So lesson 37 is, you don't have to worry about getting enough protein or amino acids as long as you're eating a variety of plant foods. Lesson 38. Growing up, I remember the menu was always chicken, beef, or pork. But as a vegan, you need a new go-to protein source. Enter the new big three: chickpeas, lentils, and beans. Think of them as your vegan protein superheroes. With just these three, you can whip up soups, curries, Buddha bowls. You can even replace ground beef with lentils, or a bolognese, or a shepherd's pie. And of course, there are other protein sources out there like tofu, but just these three can take you very far. So lesson 38 is think of chickpeas, lentils, and beans as your new chicken, beef, and pork. I try to use these as my main protein sources now. Lesson 39. Since I wasn't eating fish anymore, there was a big nutrient of concern that I was missing. Omega-3. Everyone knows this nutrient as the fuel for the brain. Well, there are actually great plant sources of omega-3 that are also full of fiber, and they can help lower your cholesterol. These are chia seeds and flax seeds. I started to include these in my breakfast because it's easy to throw them into smoothies or oatmeal, for example. So lesson 39 is try to eat chia or flax seeds every day, and ground flax seeds are easier to digest than whole. Lesson 40. Now, you might be watching this video and you're not sure if you can trust this random guy on the internet for nutrition advice. And you know what? That's fair. But what if there was a way to confirm what this guy is saying about the amino acids and getting all the nutrients you need? Well, there actually is. It's called Chronometer, and it's like having a personal nutritionist in your pocket. You just put in your foods, and it tells you how you're doing when it comes to hitting micronutrients and amino acid breakdowns. So this is what I was telling y'all about the amino acids. I've never ever worried about them. You'd even be surprised how little variety you can eat and still hit all your amino acid targets. So lesson 40 is using an app like Chronometer is a game changer in the first few days to see where your nutrients come from. You don't even have to be exact, but it's good to have some sort of an idea. Lesson 41. Yes, I'm throwing in one bonus lesson, and trust me, this might be the most powerful lesson of them all. Imagine you had an app that served as a vegan treasure map, and it showed you every vegan restaurant or restaurant with vegan options around you, and it worked around the world. Well, we have that app, and it's called Happy Cow. I've used this thing in Bumble nowhere, and I swear to God, y'all, the most random places will have 100% vegan restaurants. It's even more reliable than Google Maps since it's made with vegans in mind. You might have to pay for it on iOS, so that's a win for Android here, but I'm pretty sure you can just use the web version if you do have an iPhone. Another Apple L. So lesson 41, Happy Cow is a game changer for finding vegan options around you. So there you have it, y'all. Those are the lessons I wish I had known before going vegan, and now hopefully you can benefit from the mistakes that I made. If you want to see more content about getting plant-based protein in, go ahead and hit subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video.